Bitgod, let's kick things off, man. So, yeah,
Yeah,
tell us about
do
yourself.
it.
Who is Bitgod for those who don't know you?
Yeah, it's been great. I just got off I just got off another community call like literally a second ago as well. So doing a lot of these today and having a blast. Who I am, who am I? I've been in now I think the crypto space, a little over 8 years. I've done just basically everything except for the tech side of things, right? So I've done the marketing, the biz dev, socials, and really have just had a blast, right? Across a number of different ecosystems. And I think that, my sort of Ordinals journey was about 2.5 months ago. I saw on the timeline that Magic Eden, of course, was launching on Bitcoin. I instantly went to the website. I checked out the Connect wallet feature. They recommended Xverse as the wallet for of course interacting with the Bitcoin ecosystem. I downloaded Xverse, and basically from there I was like, this sort of makes sense. And from there I started to build a thesis on sort of everything. Built this account, or really started this account. And then just started, collecting, shit posting, connecting, having a ton of fun. And then I think, what really happened was about 6 weeks ago or so. I think that everyone probably agrees that was, that's been in Ordinals for a bit, was that there was a bit of a lull, right? There was a bit of a lull on the JPEG side of things. And so what I sort of got into, and I think many others did, was of course the BRC20 side of things. And so I didn't really collect too many, JPEGs. I wasn't sort of doing anything honestly other than BRC20s about 6 weeks ago. And then I think as time went on a little bit, I started to build my own thesis on potentially doing something of my own, right, with the BRC20. And then, about 4 weeks ago or so, started to tease it. And I think ultimately the rest is history, right? And about a week, I think 8 or 9 days ago, we did the OXBT mint, and I think that mint, really went as good as it possibly could have gone with the partners over at Luminex, and just amazing. So that's a little bit about my background. I think a little background about the ordinal side of things, and of course here we are now.
It's awesome, man. I have a DM from you, dude, like way long time ago. I'll share this with everybody, dude, just to give people like a lesson, kind of like, you know, like this space. Whenever something new happens like this, it's always interesting to like replay it back and think about how you're gonna do it next time. I have a DM from you March 28th. Hey, sir, I loved your spaces. It's about 5 days since I've joined the Ordinals community. I love it so much. Info to build. Was wondering if any of the companies you invested in were hiring. Would love to help her find a problem solved. And I just replied like, yeah, a bunch of them should be. And like, I think like, I get a lot of DMs all the time. It's always hard
Yeah,
to know like who's gonna like who people are at all. But I think it also just
yeah,
tells you like a general lesson is like never fade anybody. Just like never fade any project. I faded Ordy, I faded BRC20s. I was right there. I kind of faded the frogs a little bit, not intentionally. I was thinking about sweeping 100 of them. I just didn't act fast enough. And so, I think the right move in any of these growing communities is always like, try to meet as many people as you can. Try to like, give a little bit of your time to everyone, just like you try to give, a little bit of your liquidity to like every project. You got to put a lot of bets everywhere, and you got to continue to be open minded. You're going to miss, great talents like yourself, man. I mean, man, I'm actually glad, that you're doing your own thing now because it's been such a great project. Um, I'm curious if you could like walk back, like,
yeah,
that March time, like how you grew your brand, how you built connections with people. What were some of the,
yeah.
the the key moments, and how would you sort of generalize that as advice for anybody listening?
Yeah, I think during that time, right? I think that's so funny that I guess of course did that DM, and it was like 5 days ago, so it was March 28th. So I guess it was around, I forget the exact day. I thought it was like March 20th or something when I really got in, but I guess it was March 23rd or so, and that's awesome. But my sort of focus then was, I think, definitely on the spaces side of things, right? I was sending a lot of DMs. I was really trying. I was the reply guy, right? I think for yourself, Trevor, for Leonidas, of course, Yan, who else? Even like Jake, right? Jake.bit. I had a lot of fun sort of interacting with him. And so that was really the focus, right? Was really trying to get on, I think, as many spaces as possible, as well as so focused on the reply guy side, and then of course in the DMs. I think DMs are a lot of times a really great way to connect with different people. And I think also from there, I forget exactly when I started the Bitcoin Sigmas chat, right? But that was I think another pivotal moment as well was bringing together a lot of the people I had connected with over a couple of weeks, and putting a little different alpha in there and just having fun, throwing some memes in there. That sort of stuff, I think, is really valuable to any sort of initial account or first piece of an account, just because of being recognized as someone that's around, right? I think that I'm seeing a lot of these different projects pop up, and I just read like a thread just before coming into here as well on like, oh, this person is now bigger than Bitgod. Their project should be 10x larger, and it's like, I've never even heard of this person. And I think the majority of people in this call, I've never heard of him, never met him in person, last week. And I think that stuff really goes a long way, right? And so that's what I ultimately did in the beginning, though, and it's just funny to read some of those DMs. I know Tendi was one of the first DMs I think ever that I sent on the account, either Tendi or Swagtoshi. Those sort of two that, of course, have been really helpful and supportive throughout all this.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, I mean, looking back on Tendi specifically, it was like,
Yeah,
the moment when he won me over was like, when we were on a Twitter Spaces with, and I think he might have been there too with like, some of the Laser Eye guys, not like, kind
yeah,
of half Laser Eyes, secretly counterparty enjoyers, Shinobi. And he was like, his space are just super adversarial. And, but like, it's kind of a facade. It's kind of like a show. It's kind of like how Alex Jones acts unhinged, um,
yeah,
in the sense that like we were all there and like he was just trying to like have like the most, uh, like just trying to set people up like kind of with gotchas, you know what I'm saying, around ordinals. But then Tendi would
yeah,
just be like ribbit like in the like in the middle of like the most awkward exchange, and I was like, and then he wasn't getting like he would remove them from the stage, and then it also kind of like was a tell that Shinobi like wasn't 100% serious, and then he was more an entertainer. And I was like, all right, like yeah, this guy Tendi, he's killing it. He's like, and then like fast forward to today, the Sigma Spaces and like the Swamp and
yeah.
and what him and Jake are doing is awesome and has a lot of traction. It's more successful Twitter Spaces than any Twitter Spaces I hosted before Ordinals came around. So, you know, do you have any thoughts on like how you go about like meeting the right people in these early stages when you don't know who's who, and there's going to
Yeah.
be hopefully more bit gods coming up launching great projects who may be sending you DMs being like, hey bit god, what should I do, like can I work with you or can I do this, and you're just like, hey, like thank you, I'm super busy, like what do you have any thoughts on that?
I think, yeah, I think one is I even put it, I think, really in a post yesterday. One is I think really having a longer term sort of vision, right? In that, regardless of that sort of one DM or that one reply you sent, like that shouldn't sort of perturb you from doing anything in the future, right? If you don't get a response the first time, like if you don't get a reply the first time, like you need to have a longer term sort of vision, right? In that, over time, if you continue to reply, if you continue to DM, if you're trying to get on spaces and you get opportunities to either chat with someone that you really want to talk with, or or just interact with someone that you really want to interact with, that it'll happen over time, right? With sort of continued effort, right? I obviously sent you DMs. I sent so many other people DMs, right, throughout that same, I think, first week, just trying to generally connect, trying to figure out what the hell is even going on in Ordinals, right? Even at that time, even though it was a little bit easier than like early January or late January and February, it was still a little bit harder to get into, right? There's no like drop calendar. There's not a lot of centralized places with information. You had to sort of figure out your own way, and I think that many people didn't respond to me, right? Many people sort of shrugged me off, all that sort of stuff. But like none of that stuff to me, ultimately matters. And I think that you need to have, if you're going to start anything, right, or you want to be involved in any sort of community, that stuff you can't take necessarily personally, right? You need to sort of keep pushing, and finding, I think, really your own sort of communities that you really enjoy, rather than, I think, sort of following someone else and getting mad if they don't respond on sort of the first effort, right? And so it's really just about if someone does fade you, you have to sort of keep your head down and just keep pushing, right? And like that's ultimately what I did, and I think struck a bit of luck as well. But I think you ultimately make your own luck in a lot of this stuff, right? Like people will notice when you're putting in the time, right? And a lot of this stuff is really time driven. It's not necessarily an overnight success story, right? So that's what I would say to a lot of people that are trying to either do projects, I don't know, maybe become an influencer, right, in the influencer space, all that sort of stuff. It takes time, it takes effort, and I think if you're willing to sort of take a longer term vision on that, or longer term time horizon sort of vision, you'll be okay. Eventually you'll be able to figure it out.
Awesome, man. That's great advice. I think I just turned on the allow request to speak. So if people want to try, we start to let people up, or let me know if it doesn't work. And so yeah, Bitgod, let's talk about like BRC20s.
Or they can put it in the chat too. That's good.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you guys see the stage chat, like if you hover over the stage in the channels, there's a chat specifically, open chat. And I did post in there the original DM. Please don't tell anyone about how I missed the Bitgod Alpha, but you can see that screenshot in there. So Bitgod, why BRC20s? I guess is a question.
Yeah, I think this goes to a post I made a while ago as well, which was sort of, I think, define. I'm going to try and find that right now, but risk plus scarcity is sort of the post. But ultimately, what I believed in BRC20s was it was just different than anything we had really seen before, and really any fungible tokens, and arguably even non-fungibles. But it was really the risk plus scarcity piece, right? Which is right. One, the sort of near zero risk, which is the cost of ultimately minting these, right? These tokens at mint date, right, should be as close to $0 as possible, right? And that's something we worked really, really hard on with Luminex to get down to less than $15, right? I did not want it to be more than 15. And then second is no smart contract risk, right? There's no smart contract. There's no dev to rug you, right? There's none of these other sort of ancillary risks we see all over sort of ETH and these other chains that I think have just plagued their entire ecosystems, especially over these past like 6 months, where the meta has just been shitcoin after shitcoin, right? And memefi and meme coin, and like just these pre-sales that like are just so predatory. And so that's to the risk piece that I found so intriguing. I think second is really the scarcity piece, right? Which is it's a limited supply, right? It's a fair launch. Once a token is 100% minted, you can never create new tokens, right? And then second is the other scarcity piece is it's limited to 4 characters, right? And Oxbt cannot ever be deployed again by anyone else, right? And again, this just goes to the difference piece. This goes to the scarcity piece. It almost feels like potentially like a domain, right? That you can sort of perpetually build upon in the Ordinals ecosystem. And so I don't know, those sort of 2 pieces alone made me incredibly interested in building something out. And then I think as I started to think more and more about, all right, I'm going to launch this, and then ultimately what's next, I felt that it was in line with the whole sort of thesis and strategy of ultimately what I wanted to build. But I think just to go back even more, I think when I eventually, I originally sent you that DM, Trevor, right? I think on March 28th, I had honestly no intentions of really building, right? I wanted to get involved in some way. I wanted to collect. But I think that all of this stuff happened very organically and naturally. And I think just very happy to be where I was at that time. I think really enjoyed it as well. These past 4 to 5 weeks have been incredibly stressful, but ultimately have been some of the most fun I've ever had in my life. And so I think that everything has led up, previous to what I've done in the past to ultimately where we're at today. So that's ultimately the why BRC20.
That's awesome, man. And when did the shift happen for you between, wanting to maybe take like a secondary role and join someone else's thing versus start your own thing?
Yeah. Well, I think it was honestly like after asking a ton of different projects, right? If they had sort of open roles or different things, like I just got a lot of like, not necessarily no's, but a lot of products that I think weren't ready to hire more people, or weren't necessarily looking for the potential role I wanted to do, which is on the BD and sort of marketing and social side, which I think is a crucial part and will be a crucial part of anything going forward. But yeah, I didn't see like a lot of success there with companies. Of course, it's not as easy as just like, oh, go get necessarily hired, because it's like, I want to be in line with what the company is doing. I want to have interest as well in sort of a different sort of niche. So it's definitely hard. And so there wasn't a lot of companies that are necessarily, I think, ready to necessarily hire. And so it was just like, all right, like there's no companies really hiring, like what else can I do? Do I just continue to, I guess become either like an influencer or, go more so the really, I guess, builder route. And, I think I chose really the builder route as I felt that there was the most sort of, I think, potential sort of upside there for everything, right? I think not only on the team side, but also just in onboarding as many people as possible to Bitcoin. So just sort of aligned with everything that I wanted to do.
That's well said, man. I've seen a lot of teardowns on like people being like, "Here's how Bitgod gained so many followers in such a short time." Are among those different teardowns, like what do they get right? What do they get wrong? I mean, some of them are like
Yeah,
the branding was like a key thing, like the name Bitgod 21, the
yeah,
Pepe, like the orange. Like what else do you think was like really important in sort of like
yeah.
that, you know?
Yeah, I think also I put out a tweet yesterday, right, on this is I think a lot of those threads, like they try and point to like some sort of cheat code or like, do this and you'll be the next big god. But ultimately, right, it's there is no sort of cheat code to anything, I think, in my opinion, in life. It's ultimately just putting in the fucking work. And so I think the one of the core things a lot of people miss is I did all that stuff, right? The branding, the consistency, the spaces, right? The reply guy, the everything that you need to do, I think, in order to build a somewhat successful account. I think that the sort of missing piece that a lot of people get is necessarily like you need to be in a market that's growing, right? And so if I tried to do any of the stuff I did on the east side or the soul side, where I think there is a somewhat of a larger market, and that I could potentially build somewhat of a following, it would be much, much slower, right? And so the missing piece is ultimately, I think, that people are in these threads is you need a growing market, right? And what of course happened was the interest in BRC20s and I think Ordinals has of course increased exponentially over the past 3 to 4 to 6 weeks or so, right? And so I was growing steadily, but of course there was a huge spike and huge demand in content and people that are interested in Ordinals and all that sort of stuff, and I was at that sort of right place, right time, right. And so not only was it the hard work that I put in previous to that, it was a growing market, and I think that's the missing piece that a lot of people sort of get is I think, and I've said this a lot of times, if I tried to take any of my strategy over to any other chain, it would be incredibly difficult to try and grow at this point, just because it's so saturated, just because the supply and demand is so off, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the missing piece. Is you need to have a growing market, and that's currently the Bitcoin market.
Yeah, I agree totally, man. I mean, it comes down to you have to take risk. Like, like
Yeah,
if you show up to someone that's already mature and everybody knows it's already successful, um, it's going to be hard to stand out because there's a lot of competition with ordinals.
yep,
You know, um, it's like a lot of people, rightfully so, said like is it a fad? Is it a trend? Is it a new meta? Is it a new era? And I had enough conviction in it, I think, as you did, that this was a new era in order to like double down. And like there's always a risk with attaching your name to anything, with like putting yourself out there to promote something. I mean, as long as it's I mean, with Ordinals, it's not like it's like a scam. It's itself, or like a rug, or there's any risk of that. It's literally an open source project. So,
yep,
but maybe you're out there and you're on different spaces and you're saying this is like I was saying early on, like this is like the fall of the Berlin Wall and the Cold War of like laser eye maximalism. If it ended up just being a meta and like all the volume disappeared, I'd probably look pretty dumb. So, you have to
yeah,
take those type of risks. There's no reward without risk. And I think Ordinals and Bitcoin right now represent a fresh start for people to establish themselves and to, kind of, especially if you have experience from the Ethereum NFT space, you can come in with that experience and you can probably, leapfrog, no pun intended there. But you can jump ahead of the queue. You know what I mean? Because there's no
yeah.
one. There's less
Yeah, I mean,
competition. There's more risk, and that's the whole point.
yeah, I think that was something else that was really interesting, right? Is you go, I haven't written a thread in a little while, but want to do more threads. But part of the whole, our whole mission, right, was to onboard, educate, and entertain. And a part of that, reasoning behind even doing that was much of the stuff that people were interested in. there's no, like none of this stuff was Googleable, right? The sort of threads that I was writing, just to how to get into the Bitcoin ecosystem, it's very sort of limited content, right? And so again, it just goes to the supply and demand, right? The demand went through the roof for anything ordinals related content. And ultimately anyone like myself, like you, Trevor, like anyone that ultimately had a knowledge, right, previous to this explosion was in the best possible position to maximize that opportunity, because again, none of this stuff was Googleable. These people couldn't just go to Google and try and write threads ASAP. It was within the minds of people that have been here for months, right? And that's an interesting position to be in when there's sort of information asymmetry.
Yeah, totally, man. And we're still in that phase now. So I think and I think that's attractive to.
Did we lose Trevor?
Can you hear me? All right. Can you hear me?
Can't hear. Let me see. I'm going to put.
Let me come back.
Trevor, I cannot hear you.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
All right, there we go. I opened Discord another window. So, to add to what you were just saying, this is what traders and individuals want as well, is to enter a playing field where there's a lot of ambiguity in the sense that like skill is rewarded. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like a high skill cap. There's not a lot of information. It's not easy yet. It's why people were just like jazzed to like trade on spreadsheets and to run nodes, because they're thinking, hey, if like there's a reward for smarter people in terms of, you invest in, like, you have experience and you're smart, you're going to get a disproportional reward to some of the other ecosystems where it's just so easy that like anybody can get in on something, right?
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. So, Bitgod, so what is OXBT?
Yeah, so the way we really look at OXBT is, I think, incredibly experimental. What we're going to see over this next week is a number of different experiments, right? So one is on, I would say, really the sort of community side, right? We're going to be testing out with a couple different people. There's going to be a raffle sort of system. It's going to be the first, I guess, raffle done in OXBT or really in any BRC20, right? For a one-of-one art piece that is inscribed on an uncommon stat. Then I think later on in the week, there's going to be a platform that's going to be testing out, I think, the first BRC20 sort of mint with a test, BRC20 that's going to be happening in OXBT, right? So you'll be able to pay for an Ordinals mint or JPEG collection, right, on Bitcoin in a BRC20. So these are different experiments that are going to be happening, I think, on the community side that we're trying to experiment with. And then second is more so on the marketplace side. You have a big marketplace that's going to be launching BRC20 support later this week, and then with that as well, we're going to be testing out in, I think, one or two other marketplaces that are trying to launch. I think one is on Stacked and one is elsewhere. They're trying to do a basically Bitcoin native BRC20 swaps with pools as well, right? Liquidity pools. And so those are other things that we want to test. But ultimately, what we look at sort of OXBT as is sort of an ecosystem token, right? Something that involves a lot of different collections, people, etc. And we sort of see it as something similar to something like Ape token or Dust, right? That's involved or heavily involved in the JPEG side of things in their respective ecosystems. And so that's the way we currently look at OXBT. But also, like, the other problem is that's how we look at it currently. But I think that you go back like 3 or 4 or even longer, right? And I think that like our expectations of this have changed dramatically. I think everyone's expectations, of course, have changed dramatically. And so I think that we are still, I think, ourselves as well as anyone else, I think, that's trying to do a BRC20 have no clue, ultimately how this is going to go, because I think that everything we're doing right now is basically trailblazing, right? It's like no one else has done this stuff before. Let's see if this works. Let's see if this works. Maybe this doesn't work, but maybe something similar can work. I don't know, right? I think that's the way we're looking at things right now, is being as experimental as possible, some sort of ecosystem token, and I think facilitating, as much sort of innovation as we can as the leaders. That's the way we currently look at OXBT.
I actually love that. I think that makes perfect sense. It's really about creating an ecosystem and then bringing that ecosystem along with you, because all of the future
Yeah.
projects that launch in the future would love to integrate with you somehow. And
Yeah.
and so how do you think about the order of operations? Like, why a fungible token first, as opposed to, you compare it to like um, DGods have Dust,
Yep.
the Bored Apes have Ape Token. Of course, you did this in a fair launch, so there was no, crowdfund aspect to it. How do you reconcile some of these things, and how do you think about them going forward?
Yeah. Um, I think what's just so interesting about the Bitcoin ecosystem is that it's all been reversed, right? In what we've seen previously in other ecosystems, it's really been reversed, right? What we've seen in ETH, what we've seen in Solana, and I think honestly any other alt L1 is where things really start, right? Is on the fungible side, right? Is on the DeFi side, is on a number of different places other than JPEGs, right? But this is where Bitcoin has started. And so I think that to take this, I think a little bit further, we ultimately thought that maybe there's a reversal happening on the sort of JPEG side as well, right? Like within this sort of niche of JPEGs, where instead of launching a JPEG first or an NFT collection first, you're launching the sort of fungible token side of things, and then can go into whatever's next, right? If that is sort of an NFT collection. And so that's why we looked at it, was there's a reversal happening, right, on Bitcoin. Maybe it goes a bit further. Maybe it goes a bit deeper with ultimately ordinals. And so that's what we decided to do. And I think it allows for, ultimately our goals, right, is I think where we've sort of been, what we've done so far allows us to maybe have a bit of a launch pad for ultimately what's next, because of how many holders we have, right? The end goal was, or the two sort of main goals for Oxbt was one, to have the most holders, and two, right, to break Bitcoin. And I think to some degree we achieved that second goal, right? There was about 3 or 4 blocks that were all just OXBT mints. But I think at least to the holder side, or I think we capped out around 34,000 holders, which I think is incredible, and I think now are sort of hovering around 20,000. And so I think that's really powerful, right? I think the majority of those people that are holders, minted, all that sort of stuff, were not from Bitcoin, right? They were from Ethereum, they were from Solana, they were from any other ecosystem you can imagine, setting up their experts or any sort of wallet for the first time. I think that's ultimately amazing. But I think just going back to your question, Trevor, we felt as though there was potential for reversal, right, in doing things in a sort of a free and fair launch, and then ultimately going into what's next with that sort of amount of holders. And I think we've done that and are really focused now on ultimately what's next.
Yeah, and I think I would add to that. I think like sometimes just like timing is what's important, right? So,
Yeah.
sometimes like this is like more of an art than a science. And it's like, if people are demanding something, it's like, don't try to be too clever. Like go with what the market is asking for. And then, like the best laid plans, like the best startups always end up moving to plan B anyways, uh,
Yeah.
and there's like this idea in early lean startup days of like, like the goal is actually to get to whatever the plan B is, that you assume your plan A isn't going to work. And I think that goes back
Yep.
down to actually, like essentially like some things will kind of happen for a reason. Like when we launched this alpha group the other day, I didn't know what I was going to do, but then like, I asked you to be a part of it. I asked my people to be a part of it. I forgot to ask Udi. So I announced that Udi was going to be a part of it. And I was just making this joke about, hey, we're going to give out free Taproot Wizards. And it just like, that like joke, like literally blew up. And then we, had people, right click saving, and like, sometimes you just have to
Yep.
be in the moment, make the right call. And, they're like trying to like master plan everything doesn't always work. Right. And taking into
No.
perspective, like what you see happening. Right. And like at this kind of at the planning stage of OXBT, it was very clear that people wanted to see the evolution of BRC20.
Yeah. 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 And I totally agree as well. Like, I think that if we consistently, there was times where we consistently tried to just like figure out a content schedule for like anything we were doing, but it was just like like everything was moving so quickly. We would have like little failures over here that we'd have to go, put out the fire for. Like when you're going through, I think for a startup, hyper growth, right? Like you cannot afford time to like consistently plan out stuff. That's just not how it works. And I think that's ultimately what happened, right, over these past 3 to 4 weeks. And I think now as we go into another sprint is like you can plan out a little bit, but I do think that like anything, there will probably be 10 different sort of hurdles that you'll have to go figure out before you can get back to planning shit. And so like that stuff really works when there's like a saturated market. You need to consistently or you need to constantly like think about new ways to grab attention or something. But it's just like when everything is happening at 1,000 miles an hour, there's no way to plan. Like the plans make no sense either because it changes so rapidly. And that's ultimately what crypto is anyways.
Yeah, totally. The space moves so
Daily.
fast, and I think even like you look at some of the people who are really great at like building community, like Frank, Frank DeGod's like, I get the sense that he's just always on, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
if the faster you can go from inspiration to execution, and you're not going to be right every time, but the faster you can shorten that experimentation cycle is really how you're successful here, rather than, I mean, you do have to do things like carefully. Like when you guys launched Oxbt, you had a very, well thought out like rollout for it. You worked with Luminex, you worked with Xverse, you thought through the game theory to make sure people couldn't game it. And you put a lot of care, measure twice, cut once on that launch. But at the same time with, like you're focusing on like, what is the, like kind of what are the soft signals in the market? What is the qualitative market telling you that it wants? And,
yep,
those are two sort of contradictions that I think entrepreneurs and builders have to deal with at the same time in order to be successful.
totally. Yeah, I mean, I think that even goes back to where we started this combo, right? Is I'm not ultimately here, right, in Ordinals if I'm not consistently or constantly being aware of what's going on, right? Twitter is of course a great signal. There can be a great signal, sometimes not so much. But of course, like I wouldn't be here if I wasn't just like actively aware what the hell was going on the timeline and seeing that Magic Eden launched on Bitcoin, right? Um, Otherwise, I would just learn from probably somewhere else and fade it. So it was just like always having, I think, curiosity. I think as well as being willing to try a ton of different things and honestly being willing to fail. Probably the majority of them is really key for I think anything in crypto and probably anything you do in life. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, guys, if you're in the audience, you want to come up and ask Bitgod a question, feel free to request to speak, and I'll bring you up here to ask a question. So Bitgod, like, what are you most excited for coming next in Ordinals? Like, what do you think is gonna happen, like, short term wise in like the tech? Like, anything you're excited about? Like we mentioned, there's a marketplace going to launch next week. What do you think some of the low hanging fruit for how this technology can evolve in the next month or two, and then long term, what are you excited about?
Yeah, I think short term, I'm really excited about just some of the basic DeFi stuff that I think needs to happen, right? Like basic swaps, right, on the base layer, just going from like Bitcoin to a stable coin, I think is really key. Seeing that hopefully sort of done soon. A BRC20 swap on the base layer. I know there's a bunch of BRC20 swaps that are potentially going to stacks as well as other sort of layers. I think that stuff I'm particularly excited about in the short term. Longer Longer term, I've said this on a lot of spaces, I think in a couple tweets as well. I really do believe that because of the invention, this is what's so crazy, right? Because of the invention of ordinals, right, or the implementation of ordinals and ordinal theory by Casey, right, about 6 months ago, I really do believe that because of that innovation, ordinals and just Bitcoin and Bitcoin DeFi and fungible tokens and everything we see in crypto today is all going to come to Bitcoin ultimately, and you're going to have, I think, one of the largest, if not the largest, crypto ecosystems or Web3 ecosystems in the world, right? That is probably going to be as big, if not larger, than Ethereum. And so that's my ultimate sort of thesis. And so what that means is, I think, in the longer term, right? DeFi, you already have a company like Liquidium, right, that's trying to do, ordinals sort of NFT fi, all of that stuff I'm incredibly bullish on. And so that's what I'm really excited for the long term as well as the short term. Like there's so much basic infra, there's so many things that need to be built out. But for the short term, the swaps and stuff, and then for the long term, I'm just generally excited about everything I think that's going to come here. But yeah.
Awesome, man. Super cool. I have Chris Coffey up here, who's one of my co-hosts for the NFT Now Not Financial Advice show, also part of the Ninja Alerts team and one of the mods here. To ask you a question, I also have OX Ken and Risky in the audience, part of the Ninja Alerts team. Would love for them to come up, ask you a question. I'll also let people on the stage now. And guys, we are doing if you didn't see the NFT, in the announcements, we launched you can burn two of my car NFTs to get a Bitgod Meet Bitgod NFT on Manifold. So make sure you check that out. The claim ends in like an hour, just for these 3 hours. So if you check the announcements, you can get one. We have some fun surprises for all the members of the group coming up with this Bitcoin summer collection. We'll reveal more of the details in the future. So Chris, what's up, man? Chris, are you there? Can you speak, or am I getting rugged? Bitgod, are you there?
I'm here. I can't hear Chris though.
Chris, are you rugged? Am I rugged?
Yeah.
Is the stage rugged?
He must be rugged.
I did try to let up. I think he'll rejoin. I'm trying to let people up from the request to speak.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right, let someone up. There we go. Fire Scorpion.
Oh, perfect.
Chris, are you
Hello?
back? Fire Scorpion, I can hear you. Chris, are you?
Oh, you can hear me.
I'm trying to be back. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Chris,
What's
what?
up? So used to Twitter Spaces, having to mix this up. Got a new setup, so haven't been on Discord in a minute. Hey, Bitgod, welcome, man. Thanks so much for being here tonight. I've been following your tour, man. Like, you've been on so many Twitter Spaces and so in the space. Like, it's been really cool just to kind of follow you and see like the crazy growth. And it was so much fun participating in.
Yeah.
Weren't you like on our Not Financial Advice when you were pretty new-ish? Like, I think you had under 10K followers.
Yes.
when you joined
Yes. I absolutely was. I think at least once, definitely.
Man, that's wild. Everything just exploded so quick, and here we are in Discord with 300 plus people in here. It's just crazy, man.
That's awesome too.
Yeah.
That's definitely the biggest one. Definitely the biggest one I've done so far. So thank you, Trevor, for putting this together. Thank you.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure. It's our pleasure to have you. So, Krista, do you have a question for Bitgod? Do you want to, or we could go to, we got 3 other people up here now.
Yeah, man. It's a little vague. But I obviously have my case of just why I'm excited about Ordinals and BRC20s. And I'm excited about Oxbt because of you and the team and seeing the presence and, just kind of everything, launch and everything like that. What can you give us? And I know you're not obviously going to reveal like phase 2 right now, like on the stage, but like, what else can you give us? Like, if somebody asked you, why should we be excited about Oxbt? Like, what would be your answer?
Yeah, I think really a number of reasons. One is I think that we're working our asses off, and I don't know of too many too many other teams or really any teams on the BRC20 side that are doing that. I think second is we're trying to try as many things as honestly humanly possible, right? So I talked a little bit about I think a lot of the experiments that are going to be happening. A lot of this stuff is stuff that's never been done before, right? Like being able to do a raffle in a BRC20, right? Yesterday or 2 days ago was the first time that a JPEG or ordinal was purchased in a BRC20. Again, this week is we're testing out a lot of different things with swaps and tools with BRC20. So that's I think what you can ultimately expect from us is listen, we're going to work our asses off, right? We have been, we'll continue to do that. Second is a lot of experimentation, right? I think that for anyone, I think for myself, for anyone, I guess that's trying to build a BRC20 that is like, here's exactly what we're going to do in the next 2 to 3 weeks, as well as 6 months, I think is just, it's probably just a bunch of bullshit because it's just like, we have no clue of where this stuff is exactly going. I think we have a general vision that we're executing on, but I think we also need to be very flexible in potentially how we get to that, because I think so much stuff has changed over the past 5 weeks. And I expect that to also, sort of change and be different over these these next 5 or 6 weeks, as well as much longer. So I think what you'd expect from us is hard work, experimentation, I think continued sort of education and onboarding. And I think a lot of focus as well on just art, culture, and having fun. So that's only what you can expect from us. And probably a lot of, honestly, Chris, lastly, a lot of surprises. I think that we had a crazy call this morning, team call this morning, that was a curveball, but could be one of the craziest curveballs we've probably seen in all of Bitcoin over the past like 6 months. And if we focus on the granular, we execute on it, it would be just a crazy. I think a lot of people would be super super surprised, stoked, just amazed. But yeah, that's what you can expect from us, Chris. Great question.
Heck yeah, man. Love to hear it. I'm still holding my mint, and I plan on accumulating more, so I'm super excited to see what you guys build.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, I would even add to that, like if I were trying to explain to someone Oxbt, I would just say like track record, innovation, attention, community. Like these are all like things that I think stand out about the project. Let's go next to, I think, Fire Scorpion. You were up here next. You have a question for Bitgod?
Yeah, I have a question. It's just a quick one.
Yep.
This is the second time in like 2 days that we are burning our Bitcoin summer for other NFTs, and I just was wondering if you're planning to like do this more often now, or like what's like the big plan?
Yeah,
Like,
I
is
don't.
this-
I don't want to reveal. I don't want to reveal. I want to
Okay.
keep. I want to keep you guys on your toes.
It's redacted.
Okay.
It's redacted. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But
Good,
you
good.
can maybe if you you look at what's going on, you get a sense for I want to leave it open, to interpretation, and let people do it what they want.
Okay. Good. That sounds good to me. I'm all up for like a free space to do whatever you want. So yeah, thanks.
Awesome. All right, I think next up was Asian Persuasion. You have a question for Bitgod?
Hey, how you guys doing? Yeah, I guess a couple questions. So first one is, because do you have a Discord, currently?
Yeah. So that question, right? We have made a Discord. Right now we're just focused on hiring the sort of proper people for that, right?
Gotcha.
Just like Trevor has, mods, and I think we have sort of all that in place, and should be launched before the end of this next week.
Okay, awesome. And then my second question, just a random question because I'm curious, but who did the art for the Meet Bitgod 1155 token? Because it's pretty dope.
That's also
Trevor, that's a question for Trevor.
That's also redacted.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, I think next up was Diego. Diego, what's up? You got a question for Bitgod?
Yeah, how you doing? Well, nice to see you here, Bitgod. Nice to be on Discord Spaces.
Nice to see you, man.
What's up? So, quick question. I mean, back in March, you DM'd me about participating in the hackathon. Was this already an idea of, maybe I could build this, maybe I could participate in the hackathon, or did you have other plans? Would you be doing something else if it wasn't for the BRC20?
I think again, like this goes back to, I think, Trevor's question, right, on me DMing him, and then I think trying to just generally check out the Ordinals ecosystem. I think I was definitely interested in checking out what other people were building right at the hacker house, as well as seeing if there's anything interesting that I would love to get involved with. But at that time too, I think I had thought about the potential for like some sort of swap protocol that was just focused, again, like what I believe is sort of basic infra, right? Which is just the swapping from Bitcoin to Bitcoin to a stable coin, right? And I think I reached out to like Yan on this, like, hey, do you guys support USDC or USDT, something like that? And I consulted with like a couple other people, but never sort of pursued the idea more than I think some DMs, as well as maybe a couple calls. But that was something I was definitely thinking on. It was just like a very simple swap at least to start, that was just focused on swapping from Bitcoin to a stable. And I expect, I guess, that's probably going to happen soon because you have Stably that I think is coming, right? Just a BRC20 native stablecoin. So, but yeah, great question, Diego.
Yeah, I'm super.
That's awesome, Jared. Yep.
Oh, go ahead, Diego.
Thank you, Bitgod.
Awesome.
No, so that's awesome. I do think stables on BRC20s will make it easy for people to swap in and out, and of BRC20 and Bitcoin, and it's something that we're looking forward to and excited for as well. I think that's a big unlock.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think BRC20 stablecoins is like one of the most disruptive things to centralized exchanges like ever in the history of the space.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be fascinating. We have OX Ken up here too from the Ninja Alerts team, mod of the Discord and co-host of the NFT Traders Club. The not financial advisor of the NFT Now spaces that we do. Ken, what's going on, man?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know I was not on mute. Sorry. Yeah, what's up?
Hey, man.
So Ken,
I'm good. What's up?
oh, go ahead.
No, I was just listening in. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I got a question for you. How much OXBT do you got so far? This guy Ken was on the Twitter Spaces. We did the OXBT mint live. Chris was on there. I think Ken was in the audience, and I remember Chris was like, "Yo, I'm not feeling well. Can I leave the space early?" I'm like, "Sure." And then, Chris did the market report. He didn't have the OXBT mint in the market report, and I was like, "Chris, this is a critical mistake. You're supposed to be the alpha guy here on the team doing the market report." And then, but as we started talking about, he ended up staying and doing the mint. Chris, how much OXBT did you get in the mint?
Oh, I just did one wallet. I wasn't as prepared as you with your 20, Trevor. But
Yeah, Chris, don't say that. And
yeah, I just did one wallet. I definitely fought through throwing up that entire night to try my best to participate in the mint, and I was able to participate.
That's awesome. Ken, what about you?
None right now. Still watching.
Still watching. When are you going to stop? Losing out on generational wealth.
Is it still generational?
I don't know. It could be. I mean, there's all like, what do you think the market? What's the market cap of ERC20s? And then what do you think the market cap of BRC20s will be?
I haven't done the math, but are you talking about BRC20s or XBT?
I mean, one and the same. I mean, I think the market will expand. I
think the question you mean is yes, or the answer is yes.
I think that to be seen, like how big the market cap of BRC20s will be, but I think it's like a fraction of the size of if ERC20s are 100 billion and we're at like 500 million for BRC20s right now, we're only 0.5%, not even 1% of the size of ERC20s. And if this becomes a big thing with we see stable coins, et cetera, I mean, the market size could be quite big. And, being early in the space, having a first mover advantage, I think is big. So I think it's bullish. So that's kind of my thesis on the BRC20s as a whole, is like, how can there not be a diverse fungible token ecosystem on Bitcoin when it would make it so much easier to go from, the 600 billion in Bitcoin to just swap into other assets. I mean, it just seems like a natural fit. You don't have to go to centralized exchanges. You don't have to wait for 8 confirmations from the centralized exchange, and you don't have to you don't have to put your funds in a place that may be a custody risk. So, Ken, we'll be patient for you. We'll let you hopefully not fade, future opportunities. But I always appreciate you coming up here, man. I think Drake on Digital was next. Drake on Digital, you have a question?
Yeah. First, want to say thank you guys for letting me jump up, and appreciate what you guys are doing, especially Trevor, Bitgod. You guys are definitely some legends in the space. I've been noticing that like since day one, looking into BRC20s, Ordinals, and the whole Bitcoin thing. Since day one, that's all I heard. Go check out Bitgod and go check out Trevor. And you were actually one of the first spaces that I listened to get my introduction to it. So I want to say thank you to that. So first off, just kind of want to put that out there. Appreciate what you're doing, and I don't know if you feel anyone appreciates it or not, but I do.
I appreciate that, man. No, I mean, I'll take it I'll take it all day, every day. You know, I appreciate the appreciation, and it means a lot.
Well, first thing I want to ask, I don't know if there's anyone else here that's new listening, but well, actually, first before we get into that, have you guys heard of the BRC 30 news, or no?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it may actually, as long as it's not super centralized, it could actually be bullish for the BRC 20s, unless OKX tries to like put some rails and gate it. I wouldn't like that, but it would be interesting to see what it does. At least taking liquidity from the not taking the liquidity, but making BRC 20s more like a Bitcoin or an ETH instead of more like meme coins. But I guess the real question I want to ask is, for anyone who's jumping into the space or is new to the space, what are some must look at ordinals and BRC 20s? Yeah, I know Oxbt.
I'm curious. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, we have to be very clear, on our side, like that we just cannot, comment on price or make investment recommendations. Something that I've been saying, I think go on this is in a lot of spaces is I think that there's so many different communities, art and ordinals now, and I expect that to increase, exponentially over these coming months. And so I think that really take your time to look into whether it is BRC20 or something else, or one of these other sort of communities, to just see how they are, right? Like seeing what they stand for, seeing how their community interacts, seeing how, all this stuff works, I think is the best recommendation I can make to you to getting involved with certain communities. I think one of the communities I first ever back in March was I bought a couple Bitcoin frogs, right? I think that those used to be much cheaper, of course. That's no longer the case. But I think honestly, like my best recommendation is just spend a little time, right? And also you'll find, I think, your sort of community that you like the most very quickly by just spending a little bit of time in spaces and different sort of, I think, DMs as well as group chats who you guys really like.
Yeah, totally. We're hoping to we do have the volunteer application. By the way, guys, this is a brief update. We're gonna start, for people who want to volunteer in the alpha group, we're going to start having some group interviews. I'm going to post the link. We reviewed all the applications, and we want to start posting, like, have people who can help do deep dives on different BRC20s or ordinals or other topics. But I think, like where the space is at right now, I actually heard this from a meme coin trader on ETH. He was like, his strategy was basically like, to load up the website like every day and just put $50 in the top 5, like whatever is trending volume wise. That's kind of like an interesting strategy. I think if you're in a growing market, you can probably generate like positive EV that way. But of course, like the best thing will be to keep your eyes out for legit projects. I think that they're still a bit few and far between, but they're starting to come out now with like more projects that are legit, that have a BRC20 behind it. I'd recommend you get familiar with all of the wallets and all of the exchanges. There's different features on every wallet that like as a space is like moving super fast. Like the main wallets like Xverse, Hero, and Unisat all have like some different features around them. So, be familiar with them, play with them, make sure on all the different marketplaces, make sure on Unisat, make sure you're on Magic Eden, on Gamma, on Alex as well. They have like a L2 order book. Make sure you play with all these things and get some experience with them. Make sure that you have multiple wallets, put a little bit of Bitcoin in all those, because I think there's going to be a lot of stuff happening coming up.
So for anyone new or getting into ordinals and BRC20s, do you recommend anyone buy some things? Or I know you can't recommend, but in your shoes, if you were first getting in to the space now, because I know you guys were early, so you guys were able to mint things, so it was almost like no risk and almost infinite upside. Uh, would you recommend people to look for newer mints or look at older communities and looking at some of the assets and picking those up?
I do think there's disproportional rewards on minting. You know what I'm saying? Like buying on secondary
Mm-hmm.
is always riskier. So the only time to buy on secondary is like if you really miss something that you think, has something, coming up next. I mean, if you look at the last bull run, like the biggest returns were just from owning a Bored Ape. You know what I mean? And a lot of people miss the mint. But if you just kind of bought in because you saw like the community, you saw, the kind of the culture that they were creating and kind of that they caught lightning in a bottle, um, you know, there were people who sold it like at like point 0.3 ETH or point 0.5 ETH. You know what I mean? If you, so
Legends.
those are always hard call to makes when it's like buying on secondary. But I think when it comes to mints, you just want to participate in as many as you can. You want to get in as many allow lists as you can. Like there's kind of like never enough, right? So it's like because the next something's gonna hit next. You just don't know what. So you want to kind of almost spray and pray a little bit, right? If it's like definitely I think this is why I think alpha groups are so important because you got to like build connections, figure out who is smart, figure out who is positive sum, not zero sum mindset, and start to build the relationships like in this Discord with different people to exchange information and share perspectives. Like our goal is that like this the voice chat hangout will be like there'll be people in there 24/7 is our goal going forward. So that way you can pop in, you can ask questions, you can talk about different projects, and I think that this is the beginning of Bitcoin summer in my opinion. Like I think that next few months there's so much upside left that we're just at the beginning. Like even it feels to me similar to like the 2021 cycle where it was like really things kind of kicked off in like there was things in March, there was things in April, and then it was like really hot in May, June, July, August, and then it kind of like then it went into like there was kind of like ups and downs throughout the fall, and then like a blow off top in Jan, and then like the market fizzled down, right? Like I wouldn't be surprised if we have a similar type of duration on this one, or if it's like maybe a little bit shorter since people always are one step ahead of the narrative, like you see with, Elon Musk is going on SNL, like, Saturday night, like everybody dumps Doge on like Friday night. You know what I mean? Like the traders are a little bit ahead of where the prediction is. So, but I get very similar feelings to like 2021 NFT bull run. And I think like from people I've talked to who like time these things, it's usually like there's like a solid like 6 months or so of kind of the Gartner, the Gartner hype cycle where it's like it's a hype and then there's like a dip and then like people like all the experimentation is done, people have kind of figured out what works and what doesn't, and like more meaningfully building happens. I think we're in the hype cycle right now, and I think maybe that's going to be 6 months or so, and now is like the perfect time to kind of put as much time as you can into just getting like a little bit of everything that looks good, because I've already faded like 2 like huge opportunities. Like I faded Ordi, should have just like stayed up that night and minted some for free, and also the frogs, like $50. I was like, man, I should really sweep like 100 of these. You know what I mean? Now they're like 4K. So I think there will be several other opportunities like that in the coming months.
Yeah.
Hey, Trev,
Yeah.
do you mind if I jump in real quick and add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that's it. I asked too many questions, so.
Oh, but regarding your question, I think that as someone like I myself am just starting, even though I've been around and I've heard about ordinals for a while, I'm like just getting started with actually buying stuff and things like that. And I think one of the most important things to look out for is what's going to open up more opportunities for you? Right now, a lot of the projects that I'm seeing, they're pretty much falling into the whole whitelist, Discord grind sort of meta that kind of sucked for Ethereum NFTs and it lasted a long time. So maybe, you know, you can see that and figure out like, okay, do I want to go through that, or do I want to be a part of a community that has a lot of collabs so that you can sort of skip doing that, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where I messed up initially, like getting into BRC20s and Bitcoin and Ordinals, is that I I funded a wallet with a good amount, and I just started spraying and praying. And I mean, some did well, some did okay, and then others was like, man, what was I doing? I think that would be the biggest thing, at least from what I've learned, is just wait, mint some stuff. Like Trevor was saying, it's almost infinite upside, and it's a better risk to reward.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's all about also like just like bet sizing and knowing how to get out, like ladder out of a
Yeah.
project after it mints. You know, you always want to like you always try to like mint like three things, you know, like three of everything. And then like the first one you flip for, you know, a 2x, and then, you know, the second one you flip for, you know, 3 to 5x, and then you hold one for, you know, the moonshot kind of a thing. Cool. I think next was Emilio. Emilio, what's up, man?
Hey man, thank you for having me. So I had 3 questions. If you don't mind going bar for bar real quick.
Let's do it.
So the first one is, you guys are clearly doing an NFT for a burn of Oxbt, not burn, but for redemption using Oxbt. What do you guys plan on doing with that supply? Do you guys plan on burning it? Do you guys plan on holding it to give to exchanges? What is your plan?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I think that we're having a ton of internal discussions on this exact sort of point. And I think the what you've seen a lot of as well across the timeline is, oh, you need X amount for, you know, you need X amount for the mint, you need X amount for this, and blah blah blah. And it's just like, you know, none of it is coming from any sort of like source. It's just like random speculation. The problem with that, right, is if we do say either we announce it publicly or there is somehow some sort of leak, is what happens is, of course, like as we get closer to whatever comes next, right, as we're continuing to shroud that in mystery, the price could go down, it could go up, and then it makes no sort of sense on the actual economic side, the sort of number that means, you know, you get X. And so something like that is probably not going to be decided until, you know, maybe a day or a couple days before, just because of those exact sort of reasons. But ultimately, right, there is a lot of internal discussions happening around, does it get burned, right? Does it go into sort of the treasury? You know, what ultimately happens is definitely something that we have on our minds and are discussing internally, you know, daily, if not multiple times daily.
Wonderful. My other question is, do you guys plan on like, you guys have this whole backstory for Oxbt, where the block was minted on, for the XBT Herb contract. So do you guys plan on releasing the NFT in a special way, like with a special block from that time frame, or on special Satoshis?
Absolutely, right. We definitely, again, these are other internal conversations that we are having, right? We're chatting with miners, right? We're chatting with some of these different, you know, Rare Satoshi Society, some of these different people that are heavily involved, of course, you know, and good friends with Nullish as well, that are heavily involved, of course, on the side of rare, uncommons, you know, pizza sats, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So these are definitely things that we're having conversations about. Would love to figure out how we also do that, because I think that you know, being able to do it on an uncommon or maybe something that ties into, you know, more of the sort of lore, right, is would be amazing. But again, it also comes down to like cost, right? Do the economics really make sense? And so, you know, we inscribed, of course, Oxbt on an uncommon for 2014. We inscribed the redacted orange on uncommon from 2014 as well. So a lot of that stuff we're trying to do. It's just, I think also though, with this increased, you know, interest in rare sats and just like Bitcoin in general, a lot of this stuff is getting inscribed on, and people are getting really scared about losing the potential for these different type of attributes, I guess. So it's becoming now a race, I think, in my opinion, and we'll see, right? We'll unfortunately have to see.
Definitely. And my last question is, so Brad is a really, really good community builder on the team. I know Brad's involved in several other projects that he has not announced yet. What is his involvement in the long term?
Yeah, so he is he was connected with me basically I think it was almost 3 or 4 weeks ago exactly. And Trevor had a little space about that as well, right? About how it basically all started. But essentially what happened was I think I was on a space with Trevor. I was on a space maybe with like Leonidas. It might have been the Ordinal show. I'm not sure. But I was on a Twitter space with Frank, right? I had maybe 6,000 to 7,000 followers. I was slowly sort of increasing in growth then as I was teasing sort of Oxbt. And he sort of messaged me around on the side and he said, hey, how can we get your BRC20 to Bitcoin DGOT holders? And at that time, I honestly didn't have a plan for that because also at that time, there was no infrastructure to even think about any sort of tokenomics, right? There was no infrastructure like Luminex out yet. And so at that time, I was just planning on doing a Unisat live mint, right? Like every other BRC20 had done. And ultimately just waiting though until sort of network fees had come down. And so, I continued to tease. And then obviously Frank messaged me. I said, shit, I honestly don't know how we do it, but let's chat. Right. And so we added each other on Discord. He connected me with Brad. And so Brad and myself really instantly clicked. And I was just basically like, dude, like I need help. You know what I mean? I need some help on a bunch of different things. It was only myself and sort of one other person that was, not necessarily helping on that side. It was helping more on the creative side. And so, I was basically like, I need help. And then basically from there, we came up with a plan to initially do the mint, right, with only Bitcoin DGOD sort of holders getting an airdrop. But, from there, we also had a couple different platforms come out with potential functionality to do, some sort of tokenomics or do some sort of airdrop or, a number of different things. And so from there, ultimately, Brad sort of joined. His current role right now and how you would like it to be is like operating advisor, right? But as far as like him involved on other projects, I don't think he's involved on any other Bitcoin project, other than maybe like Bitcoin DGODs in some sort of like holder as well as general member fashion, right? He doesn't necessarily help out there in a lot of ways. As well as I think it's where it's trending is much more focused for anything that he's doing is definitely on sort of the redacted side of things. So that's what his current sort of title is, operating advisor. But he's arguably much more than that. I would say much more involved on a day-to-day basis.
Awesome, thank you, man. Appreciate you guys for your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome, man.
Hey, Trevor, I need to get to a team call right now, but do we want to do one last question to round it up, if that's all right?
Absolutely, man. And thank you so much for being here and for answering all the questions.
Yeah.
I think Stable Sir was up next. So Stable Sir, you got the last question, and then I'll hang out here a little bit if people have other just general Ordinals questions. Make sure you guys also get that Bitgod Meet Bitgod mint. There's only like 45 minutes left, and it's looking good. So yeah, go ahead, Stable Sir.
Hello. So you're telling me that we could be on Discord where I don't believe this is being recorded and Elon's not listening in on us, so I can just like say whatever I want on this thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Very cool. Yeah,
and I am recording you, by the way, so.
Okay, great. Well, I'll be careful. Yeah, thank you guys very much. My one question here is when, but more importantly, how are we doing? First of all, I think stablecoins on BRC scares the crap out of me, but I'm totally here for it. How are we doing Oxbt pools, like natively on Bitcoin even? I mean, are we, building out these type of tokenomic structures and everything for BRCs?
Yeah, so I think so far, Stable Sir, obviously there is the stablecoin with BRC20s, right? That's coming. I don't know the timeline, but that's coming. But right now, I think I may have misspoke. There is a couple products that I know are building base layer swaps, but I don't know any yet that are trying to do pools on Bitcoin base layer, right? I don't know any yet. Diego up here is trying to do a couple things that I've mentioned as well. And then there's a couple other companies that are trying to do these swaps as well as pools, not on the base layer. So maybe I got a little confusing there yet. But listen, if anyone is doing it, I'm in, right? And we would love to chat.
I love that. It's definitely a sphere. This is Nick, by the way, with Deep Lake, and so this is something that I'm thinking. Yeah. Hello there. Yeah, I got to slide into your DMs because this is definitely exactly a topic that I am obviously incredibly infatuated with right now. I'm figuring this seems kind of like it is the next phase of this whole thing. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. This is we'll be in touch, but this is
perfect.
Yeah, really, really good stuff. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Bitgod. We'll let you get to your team stand up.